It's him again. It's him again. My coworker sounded excited. It's him again. It's him again. I sounded terrified. Go for it. He's worth a lot in bounties. My coworker was fired up and charging ahead. Literal, full-body adrenaline rush. I kept backing away. That new player was way too strong. All the debuffs from the rules just didn't stick to him. Watching my monster coworkers go from excitement to horror, I ran even faster. He's clearly the god-tier main character. I'm not getting involved in that mess. I was panting hard as I ran back, wondering if reporting him even did any good. Of course it didn't help. No matter how many times my coworker clutched his head and cried, after my colleague had buried his head in his hands for what felt like the 100th time, I tried to comfort the sobbing coworker. Stop crying. Just do what I do and drop right onto the floor. He shot me a tear-streaked glare. His tone was full of scorn. You don't want to do it? Then stop holding me back while I chase my KPIs. After the main team wiped out the monsters in the dungeon for the 3rd time, I dragged myself into the meeting with a flat expression. I didn't have the energy to complain anymore about why every time we're stuck in an endless loop, there has to be a team meeting. The monsters in our dungeon are facing a really serious problem right now. Any boss who's ever shown up on screen has pretty much died once already at the hands of the main characters. After clashing head-on with them like that, as long as the protagonist isn't blind, they're bound to remember a thing or two. It wasn't really practical to keep sending these bosses back to the main character again and again, which left us in a mess. Short on manpower, yet overloaded with available monsters. If we keep this up, we'll all have to pack our bags and get out. I couldn't help but perk up. Was there really something like this? The person speaking was hard to make out, but the various monsters around him clearly respected him. That meant what he said had to be pretty reliable, right? I gently nudged my coworker. Who is he? My coworker was lost in sorrow over being about to get let go. His eyes were full of tears, and when he saw me, the sorrow in them only grew deeper. The lead designer of the Endless Loop dungeon. How could you not know who that is? The manager had been in a meeting for nearly 5 hours. Finally, a few NPCs who hadn't died at the protagonist's hands were promoted to become minor bosses in the new dungeon. And guess what? I was one of them. Oops, faking death could fool the players, but it couldn't fool the performance review of an endless loop mission. I regretted my mistake so deeply. I was heartbroken. This must be punishment for slacking off all along. Well, congratulations to you. My colleague stared at me with clenched teeth and a pained expression. Me? Why do I suddenly feel so guilty? Welcome to the dungeon. The Count's Manor. Dungeon level 3 stars. As the system's background announcement played, players gradually entered the dungeon world. Newcomers, experienced players, newcomers, experienced players, newcomers. 10 or so newbies popped up in a row. Newbies are great. I don't even have to do anything. They'll kill themselves before I can blink. I counted the players, and there were 39 in total. Just one more needed. I glanced nervously at the system's final announcement, clasping my hands together and silently praying. I kept muttering frantically, "Please don't come. Main character, please don't come." Finally, under everyone's watchful eyes, a shimmer of light flashed, and a tall figure appeared in the Count's Manor Hall. He was one of those people who looked absolutely stunning. New players had no idea what was going on, but the veterans suddenly felt relieved, as if they'd found their anchor. Player Mateo has entered the dungeon. I sucked in a sharp breath, and my heart finally sank. Lord Count, Lady Countess, young master. Time to serve the guests their meal. I'm the young master, that's right, the minor boss of this dungeon. Luckily, the player's first mission was in the Count's casino. The rules were straightforward and brutal. Win you live, lose you're dead. But with the invincible main character leading them, not a single one got hurt. Plus, they all walked away rich as thieves. The Countess looked utterly devastated. What's the point of playing this game anymore? But before they could even mourn the last round that had been nothing more than a formality, the next stage was already underway. Night fell, and the Count's family, hospitable as ever, decided to warmly invite their guests. This was a gathering laced with danger. If anyone broke the dining rules, their identity would shift instantly. Diners would become food for the monsters. It was a cliché. Sure, but it made things easier for the monsters to hit their targets. I glanced at my colleague playing the Count, the big, fleshy one. Since he didn't have legs, I'd thoughtfully brought a large-sized wheelchair. Sit here. makes for a much cooler entrance. Suddenly, his belly split open like a door, and he grinned wide as he said, "Thanks, buddy." And with that, he thumped right onto the wheelchair. Then I took another look at the Countess. Her lips painted a blazing green, her face twisted into something eerie and spooky. Guessing my expression, she explained, "Mateo's seen me before. I didn't want him to recognize me, so I went all out on the makeup." Makes sense. We exchanged a glance, and for a moment, felt that unspoken bond between two souls lost in the same strange situation. I just hope the rules eliminate a few more of them. Otherwise, we're going to have a hard time making it through. Wait. How many people are still alive again? I suddenly realized it, exchanged a look with the Countess, then turned back to glance at Lord Toomer. We didn't spot any eyes on his belly, so we silently turned back around together. Can the hall fit everyone? Are there enough tables and chairs? Are there enough plates and food? The Lord and the Countess let out a sharp, piercing cry. What are you waiting for? Go find an NPC to help us. Plentiful. Player stared at the single cherry tomato on the massive serving platter. Gourmet. Player be poked at a piece of meat no bigger than a fingernail. Many players looked uneasy, sensing something was off. I held my empty plate, wishing I could just bury my head right into it. Normally, at least half the players would be eliminated by now. Now there were exactly 40 of us, no one missing. Finding enough tables and chairs for everyone was lucky enough already. Where am I supposed to find a feast like that for you? Still, there was one upside. Thankfully, I wouldn't have to sit at the same table as the main character. I quietly comforted myself. Screech. Someone pushed their chair in anger, the harsh sound echoing through the whole dining hall. Are you kidding me? Am I supposed to be some fool playing along all day just to get this for dinner? As he shouted, the veteran player quietly set down his knife. Stares like I was a complete idiot made him hesitate for a few seconds. Then he started yelling even louder. The NPC colleague, playing the servant's role, began to glow with quiet excitement in his eyes. Oops, player, that's a breach of dining etiquette. The player who had been shouting instantly got taken down by the NPC. Many newcomers went from skeptical to terrified, with some even vomiting right there on the spot. Before long, the servant approached the player who had just thrown up. Player, you've broken dining etiquette. The player, still catching their breath from vomiting a moment ago, turned pale in an instant, dread spreading up from the soles of their feet. No, please. He actually opened up. I glanced sideways at Mateo, who was silently and calmly eating his dinner. Given his usual behavior, shouldn't he be the one taking care of the monsters in this dungeon? As if sensing I was looking at him, he suddenly turned his head, his cold gaze locking onto me. He looked away less than a second later. I froze in place, gripping the dinner knife with my heart racing. Scared me half to death. He gave me that same look when he dealt with me before. It was the Countess who spoke. She sat beside me, looking just as shaken by Mateo's glare as I was. I forced myself to stay calm, mumbled a few reassuring words, then went back to my exaggerated performance with the empty plate. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me from beside. Mateo had already taken a seat right next to me, holding his tray, and spoke up first. "Have we met before?" His voice was ice cold, his eyes sharp and fierce with a dangerous edge. Could he really recognize me? I faked my death right in front of him once. What a mess. He didn't even touch me, but I went down hard face first into my coworker's back. Talk. To me, he was idly spinning the knife in his hand, like he'd stab me in the chest any second. The other players clearly noticed what was going on too, openly challenging the dungeon's minor boss. This Mateo, he's definitely someone special. I'm actually a boss that's already been defeated once before. Never seen you. I tried to stay calm. I wiped my mouth with a napkin, though I hadn't eaten a thing. The long tablecloth hid my trembling legs. Maybe I just misjudged. The knife spun high in his hand, his tone teasing as he raked me with a sharp, predatory glance. The showy display of blade tricks made the Count and Countess quietly inch farther away. I really wanted to run. Just then, a clueless little creature popped out of nowhere. "Sir, you're violating the restaurant rules." Before it could finish, Mateo dealt with it. I jumped at the sight, gripping my knife even tighter. Silence wasn't an option. Either I exploded or I vanished. I'd had enough. I shot to my feet in one motion, in the expectant stares of the Count and Countess. I've had enough. I'm heading out. Even though my legs were trembling, I still took off like a shot. That's the kind of skill I bring to the table. As soon as I made a move, both the Count and his wife suddenly felt uneasy. The Countess quickly came up with an excuse and bolted after me upstairs like she had oil on her feet. Wait for me, my lady. The Count ditched his wheelchair altogether and rolled after the Countess up the stairs like a boulder. It was kind of funny, but no one dared laugh except Matteo. I dashed back to the room in a flash, and only after catching my breath did I finally start looking around. After all, he was a nobleman's son. His bedroom was fairly luxurious. I took a long, comfortable shower and then burrowed deep into the soft bed, cocooning myself tightly under the blankets. I had no idea if there'd be more drama tonight. I tossed and turned in the covers, relieved I'd barely escaped being caught in the protagonist's hands. Just as I was about to fall asleep, a system alert buzzed to life. The young master is the only child of Lord and Lady Hovelwell. Raised in luxury from birth, with fine clothes, rare delicacies, and pampered care. Fine dining? Silk clothes and fancy meals? You mean me, who didn't eat a single bite for dinner and is now starving to death. But lately, the noble young Count's been having trouble sleeping. He won't let even the tiniest hint of weariness touch his beautiful face. Who's having insomnia? Me. When did that start? To help the young Count get a good night's sleep, players are urged to quickly select a doctor to assist him. I snapped my eyes open. Pick a doctor. There's no way this was in the normal script I read before entering the dungeon. Do you really need to overhaul the dungeon just for a 3-star difficulty? I sat up, running my fingers through my hair in frustration. Inside this godforsaken dungeon, there's a protagonist exploiting an invincibility hack, a pack of veteran players who hang on his every word, and a horde of new players completely dumbfounded by the mayhem going down tonight. Who on earth are they gonna vote to pick as the doctor? So hard to guess. With tonight's deadline looming, I couldn't help but nervously touch my neck. Even though I know my soul's gonna be taken back by the dungeon, I really don't want to go through that pain all over again. Okay? Knock. 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 I hadn't even finished my rant when the crisp sound of knuckles tapping on the door rang out. The one knocking was very polite, each knock spaced out with perfect timing. But to me, it was no different from the sound of a death spirit coming for me. I scrambled into the wardrobe just in time, right before the knocker's patience ran out, and mumbled, "Come in." I sensed him step inside with smooth precision, scan the room briefly, then stroll calmly toward the closet where I was hiding. "Your noble lordship, the Count." His voice was icy cold, yet laced with a hint of mockery, the kind of protagonist who loves watching prey fall into their own stupidity. There's nothing more entertaining than that. To him, it was just a little spark in an otherwise dull life. A sliver of light slipped into my wardrobe, just as I braced myself for being finished off right there or dragged out. I realized the tall figure was squeezing inside. The closet wasn't small, but fitting 2 adult men in it was definitely pushing it. We were practically pressed against each other. I could even feel his strong heartbeat. That's the worst part about monsters. You can still see their face, even in total darkness. No hiding from it. I couldn't even pretend I didn't see it. His face was strikingly handsome. So bold and radiant, he'd have easily made the list of the world's 10 most handsome men in my old life. There was a playful edge to his voice, always sounding just a little too sly to be trusted. "As your doctor, I think it's important you cooperate with my treatment." What else could I do? Could I really say no? Under his steady gaze, I nodded meekly. "First, come out." One hand gently rubbed the back of my neck like a calming touch, while the other pulled me into his arms. I was hauled out like a frightened quail. "Now, follow the doctor's orders." His hands rested on my shoulders, his light breath brushing against my ear. "Relax, my noble lord." He was so close it crossed every personal boundary I had. But he either didn't notice or just didn't care. "Now, get onto the bed." I couldn't help it. I half sat up and stared at Matteo standing across the bed. His gaze was unsettling, but I didn't feel any threat. More like, "No, what? You're acting like you're about to make a move on me." The words just slipped out before I could stop them. He didn't say a word, instead bending one leg to kneel on the edge of the bed, leaning his body toward me. "Turn around." His voice was cold and sharp as a blade. I groaned. "What are you even doing? Just get it over with already." Ignoring my protests, he said, "Get down on your stomach, young master." I felt a pair of strong hands rhythmically massaging my shoulders. Wait, massage? Your bones are a bit stiff and haven't been exercised much. I'll loosen you up in a bit. Nonsense. I've been running marathons every few days since entering the dungeon. Where exactly am I lacking in exercise? I was silently grumbling inside, not yet realizing just how brutal Mateo's loosening up would be. Ow. That hurts. That's enough, please. I can't take any more. My voice grew weaker and weaker. Mateo didn't say a word the whole time, but his technique was fast, precise, and relentless. About an hour later, the muscle release finally came to an end. Mateo's usual calm voice was unusually tinged with amusement. Why are you sweating so much? Should I take you to the bathroom for a quick wash? I slowly closed my eyes. Player Mateo has completed special mission / successfully put the Baron's heir into a deep sleep. Besides the hall's announcement, I heard a separate notification sound coming from Mateo. Player congratulated. Earned the Baron's heir's special favor. Obtained item. Baron's heir's affection. My eyes snapped open the moment I closed them. What do you mean? Completed special mission out of? So he still has 4 more tasks to finish. Given his personality, wouldn't he just get fed up by the second mission and cut me down without a word? And that so-called item, why not just say straight up if you're not going to give something better? What's my affection value worth? Anyway, am I supposed to cheat for him? He's the one who's basically a walking cheat code. There were just too many things to complain about. After I'd mentally cursed that lousy dungeon for a solid minute, I finally noticed Mateo still standing by the bed. Not having left yet, he moved even closer, his hot breath brushing against my cheek, as if he'd swallow me whole. I've never seen so many expressions on a monster in a dungeon before. He slowly leaned in even more, his eyes shadowed with something unreadable. There's never anything good when the main character gives you that look. I instantly became extra cautious. What are you even talking about? How dare you insult me? To boost my own courage, I ended up raising my voice a little. Mateo stared at me intently for almost a full minute before finally speaking. You're all sweaty. Let me take you to the bathroom to freshen up. I let out a startled cry, and everything spun around again in an instant. I was suddenly wrapped tightly in someone's arms, being carried toward the bathroom. His way of bathing someone was much gentler than his massage. We didn't say a word the whole time. Just the occasional splash of water now and then. When the bathing was finally done, I actually felt drowsy, dazed and half asleep. The system's task alert chimed again, announcing the progress had reached out of. I was held close in someone's arms, feeling their chin rest gently on top of my head, and the steady thud of a strong heartbeat beneath. Go ahead and sleep. His voice was deep and calm, soothing in a way that made me feel safe. I curled up against him and drifted off to sleep, surprisingly easy. Early the next morning, I was sitting up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the main hall. The massage last night really worked wonders. It hurt like crazy when he worked on my shoulders, but I woke up this morning feeling completely loosened up and refreshed. I glanced around, scanning the room in search of Mateo's figure, but I also noticed that the crowd of players who had been so thick last night was much smaller today. Just as I was starting to wonder about it, the Count and the Countess arrived together. The fatty Count didn't seem any different, but the Countess looked noticeably better. She wore an odd smile, and when she saw me, there was clear surprise in her eyes. You're still alive? Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she grabbed my hand and studied me from every angle. We thought we were going to get wiped out by that Mateo last night. After all, he's done exactly that in a few other 3-star dungeons before. We didn't expect you to actually hold him off. The Countess chuckled as she scooped some food from the platter and placed it into my bowl. I had a great time eating last night. I'd die happy today. She poked at the Count's big belly, nudging him to say something. The Count wobbled his massive frame, and another mouth sprouted from his belly. That's right. Thanks for holding off Mateo last night. Otherwise, we'd have had 0 sales again. He must have been painful to fight. You screamed something awful last night. We felt bad hearing it and decided to give you 1/3 of the profits. I feel a bit embarrassed. These two are actually quite nice. Just as I was about to laugh and thank them, a flash of light cut through the air. The noble who'd just been whispering with me about our sales targets was taken down by Mateo in an instant. The Countess, whose color had only just begun to return, turned deathly pale in that very moment. Player Mateo has eliminated the key boss of this dungeon, and earned a large amount of points. Player Mateo has qualified for completion. Would you like to exit the dungeon? Mateo's expression was cold and distant as he sat beside me. I knew he was watching me, but I couldn't bring myself to look back. I even quietly shifted my position, ready to bolt at a moment's notice. He reached out and took my hand, just like the Countess had moments before, but there was something unreadable in it. Something different. He gently rubbed each of my fingers, pressing lightly on the knuckles with just the right amount of pressure. I'll be back in your room tonight. Stay put during the day. He glanced at the Countess, who recoiled with a pale face. After breakfast, Mateo escorted me back to my room himself. I was even told not to step outside the room. Outside the room, Mateo was going wild again, just like in every previous loop. The difference this time was that he kept checking on me every few hours to make sure I was still here. Couldn't tell how much time had passed, but eventually the noise outside died down, and the door to the room creaked open again. But this time, it wasn't Mateo who walked in. A group of 7 or 8 players slowly filed into the room. They seemed wary of me, but it was clear they had bad intentions. Among the group, a seasoned-looking player who appeared to be in charge carefully studied me before speaking. This must be Mateo's boss left for us to beat and clear the level. After all, those weaker enemies outside aren't the key to finishing this. It makes sense he'd leave behind a relatively weak mini-boss like this one. If we team up and take him down together, we should be able to clear this level too. Suddenly clicked for me. That's why I was wondering. Why would a top player spare my life? So that's where he was waiting for me all along. And when he kept checking on me from time to time, it was probably because he didn't want me running off. Too risky to let these guys handle the kill himself, but since so many people are after the win condition, each of them has to leave me a fatal wound. 7 or 8 people meant at least 7 or 8 wounds. That would hurt way too much. I'm afraid of dying, and I'm terrified of pain. Being hunted down by all these people is worse than getting knocked out in one punch by the main character. Or just like that tumor baron, caught clean on his saber. Just as I was thinking, a flash of cold light cut through the air. I barely dodged it. Among these 7 or 8 people, the veteran players were experienced in combat and even had a few helpful gadgets. And me? I was just an inexperienced little boss with no real track record yet. I made up my mind in just 3 seconds. I was going back to my old tricks, even though Mateo had warned me not to leave the room more than once. But in a crisis like this, if I stayed put and played it safe, I'd be a complete fool. I pulled out my old escape routine, asterisk whoosh, asterisk, and shot straight to the door, then lunged through it in one burst. The players inside the room were clearly caught off guard by my flawless move. By the time they snapped into action and started chasing me, I was already far ahead. Stop him! Don't let him go that way. Someone shouted out suddenly. Hearing that, I picked up the pace even more. They said not to go there. Then I must be going the right way. I've been training so hard lately that running's become second nature. I've even built up muscle in my calves. I kept sprinting ahead while glancing sideways at the crowd behind me. But that one quick glance, suddenly, a shimmering net dropped down from above. Run. Go on then. Keep running. The players behind me rushed over, saw me trapped in the net and unable to move, panted heavily, then kicked me several times in frustration. I groaned in pain and shot a glare at the veteran player who'd kicked me so hard. Good thing I had this item. Otherwise, if he'd made it into Mateo's barrier, that head would have belonged to Mateo again. So asterisk, that's asterisk where the crappy gear came from. I remember you now. Just don't show up in another dungeon. I clenched my teeth silently. The next instant, I was yanked up by my hair. I didn't notice before, but this little boss actually has a nice face. Rosy lips and white teeth. Someone nearby sneered. Even if he's good looking, he's still a boss-level monster. Be careful. Don't get careless. True enough, the guy chuckled in agreement, then kicked me hard in the stomach a second later. I was slammed into the cold wall, and now not only my stomach, but also my back burned with pain. I leaned half against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. After being in this endless survival scenario for so long, I've spent every day either running or playing dead. Guess I'm finally gonna feel what it's like to die in a mission. I was scared. I feared getting hurt, fearing pain, fearing death. In my past life, I died from enduring constant suffering. The only real joy back then was reading over and over again. When the painkillers kicked in, I read everything I could get my hands on, but among all of them, Mateo was my favorite. Mateo was terrifyingly powerful, slicing through endless survival missions with ease. A strong body and unmatched strength. Things I never had in my previous life. Honestly, I'm dying to be envious. If it were Mateo, this kind of situation would probably be no trouble for him at all. If that restraining net were on him, could he just break free with ease? What about me? Could I do it? This mini-boss in the dungeon looks super weak, so take it easy. Don't go and stab him to death in one hit. Leave it to us. My face turned red as I yanked hard at the net binding me. But this net was a high-tier item. Every time I struggled, it just tightened more. The pain felt like it was cutting into my bones. I couldn't even breathe deeply, only dared to take shallow breaths. With those people closing in, I suddenly felt a strange surge of strength in my fingers. The net holding me started to show signs of cracking. Damn it! My net's about to be ruined. The restraint suddenly loosened. I could tell the player had pulled it back. High-tier gear can always be repaired and reused as long as it hasn't been completely destroyed. The guy must have been worried I'd wreck the item. This is my chance. Realizing what was happening, I pushed myself forward despite the pain, lunging another few meters. Mateo's barrier was right in front of me. No matter which way I turned, it was death. Might as well die at the hands of the main character. The angry shouts behind me cut off instantly, and I tumbled into Mateo's barrier. Inside the barrier, swirling winds howled in every direction. I watched as countless NPCs from the dungeon vanished instantly in the raging storm. Surprisingly, the winds didn't attack me. What are you running around for? His voice suddenly rang out right next to my ear, and I jolted all over. I knew he'd sense me the moment I stepped into his barrier, but I didn't expect him to show up this fast. I just stared at him, and when he raised his hand, I flinched and squeezed my eyes shut. To my surprise, no pain came. His hand gently brushed away the blood on my face, his words sharp and cold. What a mess you are. Didn't I tell you to stay in the room and not go out? The roaring wind all around was oddly careful not to touch either of us. I couldn't help but tremble a little. I couldn't tell if I was scared or just hurt. Fake it all you want. I held back the tears welling up in my eyes and shoved his hand away hard. I'm not strong, and I'm terrified of you, but that doesn't mean you can humiliate me like this. Toss me to those players just so they can clear the game by tormenting me. Just give me a clean end already, not this fake and shameless treatment. I guess Mateo was actually stunned by my sudden outburst. He just stared at his hand, the one I'd slapped hard. His expression showed shock. Honestly, he's the self-proclaimed king of wish fulfillment stories. Next to him, anyone who pulled a move like that would have been long gone and buried under 8 feet of weeds. He was about to speak, but I glared at him stubbornly. He let out a silent sigh and slowly moved closer, pulling me into his arms. Do you remember what they looked like? Now it was my turn to be stunned. What? He patted my back gently, but when he felt the wounds there, his voice turned colder. I said, do you remember what those people who hurt you looked like? Of course I do. I'm planning to quietly get back at them through other branches. After getting my clear answer, he carefully examined the wounds on me again. Seeing they were just surface injuries, his expression eased up a lot. Stay put right here. I'll open a shared view for you. Tell me who hurt you, and I'll hear every word. The guy who was just leading the hunt against me was now lying on the ground, barely alive. His eyes were red with rage, clearly still unaware of how serious the situation had become. Mateo. What's going on? You left the dungeon boss in the room. Why can't we just go take him down? Yeah, Mateo, we know you're strong, but we just want to clear the stage. It's just one boss. There's no need to go that hard on Lucas. I glanced at the little follower trying to speak up, whispering my complaint inside Mateo's barrier. That's him. He grabbed me with a net and kicked me in the stomach. Before I even finished speaking, Mateo had already sent the guy flying into the wall. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and then passed out cold. Mateo's voice was cold. I'm locking down the dungeon, and you'll all be able to leave when the time comes. Who gave you permission to act on your own? The one who'd been about to defend Lucas fell silent, stunned into stillness. Now too scared to say a word, someone even stepped forward, saying, it was Lucas who said killing the boss would earn us a reward. He claimed this was something Mateo specifically saved for us. We only followed along because of that. We didn't mean to offend you, brother. Mateo swept his gaze across the group. Exactly 8 people. A faint smirk curled at the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were icy cold. I watched from within his barrier as he wiped out everyone. Just moments ago, those same people had been chasing me, yelling and swinging their weapons. Now they all lay motionless on the ground. This was way worse than my superficial wounds. Did you really kill them all? I think I might want to go out now. Mateo let out a cold laugh. This time, it was directed at me. No, staying in here's fine too. I immediately quieted down and stayed put inside his barrier. Obediently, William, he suddenly called out my name. That was the name I had before I came into this endless world. I've never told anyone about it since arriving in this world. How does he even know my name? I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't hide the shock on my face. He suddenly stepped close to me, as if afraid of startling me, and slowly, so slowly, pressed his lips to mine. The Count's Manor dungeon has been permanently shut down. Participants are being sent back. I was asleep within Mateo's barrier when I suddenly heard the system announcement. Weird, why is it permanently closed? I wanted to ask Mateo for answers, but right after that kiss, I suddenly felt drowsy, and then I just drifted off into a deep sleep. Mateo held me close the whole time, gently stroking my back now and then. In Mateo's arms, I had a dream that felt endless. I really did cross over into an endless stream dungeon, but I wasn't just a non-player character. I was a player, and that's when I met my favorite character, Mateo. Just like in the book, he was always icy cold but never shirked his tasks. Unlike those gory scenes from the story, the characters in the dungeon are mostly victims of wrongful deaths, and players exist solely to help fulfill their lingering wishes. When the wish is fulfilled, the dungeon is sealed, and the souls of those who died unjustly let go of their regrets. They can finally find peace. Then, an alien species invaded the Infinite Loop dungeon. Everyone was trapped inside the dungeon, caught in its bizarre and unnatural rules. One by one, the people around me were dying, and the monsters in the dungeon kept multiplying. Players who perish cannot return to the real world. Instead, they are transformed into monsters within the dungeon. Mateo, there are too many copies. At this rate, we won't be able to seal them all before our minds collapse. Forgetting is the best way. It'll buy us a lot of time. I'll keep my memories safe inside your shield. If I survive, just stepping into your space will bring everything back to you. Mateo, I'll be waiting for you. Awake. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was Mateo's cool gaze. He looked distant and composed, but his concern was practically spilling over. I'd slept for so long that my head felt fuzzy, and my eyes were a bit sore. Without a second thought, he placed his hand on the acupressure point at the back of my head and began gently massaging it. I used to think my massage skills were just natural talent, but then I remembered so many old memories. Mateo's voice carried a hint of amusement. You're not in great shape, but you're always hanging around like a clingy little tail. Despite how tough the missions are, you still follow me. Honestly, I'm really happy. I've liked you since the very first moment I saw you. The rift is almost sealed, and the anomaly won't have much time before we push it out. When that happens, I'll go find you at the Sea of Rebirth. I'm sorry, I couldn't protect you. I brushed my fingers across his cheek, looking on the verge of tears. It was kind of heartbreaking. That alien calls himself the Overseer because he's got so many archived copies stored away that his energy's draining fast. Now, even the few remaining copies are full of glitches. This is our chance to strike while he's weak. I looked at Mateo, my voice trembling with excitement, my eyes growing bright in a way that startled me. You remembered. He pulled me into a tight embrace, his voice full of sadness. I thought you'd forgotten about me. I poked his firm chest muscle. I can figure out a way to bring back your memories, so I can definitely bring back my own. Mateo looked at me with that sweet, eager-to-know expression. Like a good little kid, I leaned close to his ear, whispering in that soft, intimate way only lovers have. I don't believe you'll be able to resist kissing me once you remember everything. I flashed him a sly smile. A true love kiss. Doesn't that sound romantic? A faint blush crept across his ears, and in the next instant, my lips were caught again by his kiss. The final dungeon was sealed, and I stretched lazily. Let's go. Time to give the game master a piece of our minds. We've been separated too long. You know, our poor little lovebirds. He wrapped his arms around me like a protective father shielding his cub. That alien's no problem. I've got this. Just stay safe. Okay? I kept nodding. Got it, got it. You've said it 100 times already. I leaned in and gently kissed his lips. It'll be fine. If he were really that strong, I'd have been done for already. He tightened his grip on my hand. His lips pressed into a thin line. Clearly not happy with me talking about life and death. The manager really did die fast. I lit a candle for him. He'd planned to draw energy from the infinite loop missions, but with too many sealed off, he didn't get anything. Worse, he ended up getting sucked back by them. The desperate plan he came up with was something long discarded 800 years ago. Old school corporate culture. In the afterlife sea, among countless souls trapped in the same loop, they all laughed mercilessly at this anomaly. I'm not even sure how long I laughed. William, I heard someone calling my name. I turned around and saw the one person I'd been hoping to see most.